The scream came out of nowhere. It wasn't the kind of sound you mistake for anything else, not a laugh, not a shout for help. It was sharp, raw, and desperate. The kind of sound that freezes your blood before your brain even processes it. One moment, I was walking home from my late shift, my mind on autopilot, the rain drumming steadily on my umbrella. The streets were mostly empty, except for the occasional car hissing past through puddles. My shoes were already soaked from splashes, and I was counting down the steps until I could peel off my damp socks and sink into bed, and then there it was again, louder this time, a voice twisted by panic. It came from somewhere below me, echoing off wet concrete. I slowed, tilting my head toward the source. The steady roar of rain muffling everything else. My eyes swept over the guardrail of the old river bridge, and that's when I saw him, a man, thrashing in the water like it was trying to swallow him whole. His arms flailed wildly, smacking the surface, sending splashes into the rain. His clothes dark, heavy were plastered to his skin, dragging him down, even from up on the bridge. I could tell he was losing the fight. For a second, I froze. My mind screamed at me to do something, but my legs felt rooted in place. I could almost feel his panic, like it was radiating through the air between us. He wasn't going to last much longer. I dropped my bag without thinking. It hit the wet pavement with a dull thud. My umbrella clattered beside it, instantly forgotten. My hands gripped the slick metal railing as I scanned for a way down. There is a slope leading to the riverbank, steep and muddy, but it was the only option. I slid down on my side, mud caking my pants instantly. The smell of the river hit me, stagnant, earthy, mixed with the cold bite of rain. The water's surface was dark and choppy, reflecting the dim yellow of the streetlights above in jagged fragments. "Hold on," I shouted, though I wasn't sure if he could even hear me over the current. The river felt like ice the moment I stepped in. My breath caught in my chest, my legs instantly stiffening. The cold was so sharp it felt like knives against my skin. I pushed forward anyway, wading deeper until the water reached my waist. Then my chest. My shoes filled instantly, pulling at my feet like anchors. The current was stronger than it looked from above. It tugged at my legs, trying to spin me off balance. Every step was a battle. But the man's head kept dipping under, and I couldn't stop now. When I finally reached him, his movements were weak and sluggish, his eyes wide and glassy, locked onto mine like I was the last lifeline he had left. I grabbed his arm, my fingers digging into soaked fabric, and pulled. He was heavier than I expected, his body dead weight from exhaustion. The river fought me every inch of the way back, but somehow I made it to the shallows. My knees buckled as I half-dragged, half-carried him onto the muddy bank. We both collapsed, gasping for air. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the rain on the water and his ragged breathing. His beard was long and matted, his skin pale beneath the streetlight glow. He smelled faintly of smoke and something sour, like he hadn't bathed in weeks. "Easy, you're safe now," I managed between breaths, my voice shaking more from the cold than from fear, at least. That's what I told myself. He didn't answer at first, just stared at me with eyes that seemed to look right through me, like he was trying to decide whether I was real. And then, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear it, he said, "They'll find me. You have to keep me hidden." The words sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the water. "They? Who's?" I began. But before I could finish, he scrambled to his feet with surprising speed. His legs wobbled, but he kept moving, disappearing into the shadows beneath the bridge. "Wait," I called, slipping in the mud as I tried to follow. But by the time I reached the concrete supports, he was gone, just gone. The only trace of him was the ripple of the river and my own shivering breath. I stood there, drenched to the bone, rain dripping from my hair into my eyes, staring into the darkness under the bridge. Somewhere out there in the city, a man I'd just pulled from death's grip was running from someone or something he feared enough to vanish without even giving me his name. And that was the moment I realized I hadn't just saved someone's life. I'd stepped into the middle of something I didn't understand. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the pale skin, the wet, tangled beard, and those wide, terrified eyes darting toward the darkness under the bridge. His voice replayed in my head like a broken record. "They'll find me. You have to keep me hidden." I tossed and turned until the pale gray light of dawn seeped through my curtains. The city outside was quiet, the rain having finally given way to a cold, damp stillness. I don't know why, but I felt pulled back to the bridge. Part of me thought maybe he was still there, huddled under the concrete supports, waiting for someone to help him. Maybe he'd explain what he meant. Maybe this whole thing had an answer that wasn't as ominous as it felt. The streets were slick as I walked, puddles reflecting the cloudy sky. The air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and river water. When I reached the bridge, the river below looked different, calm, classy, almost innocent compared to last night's chaos. The surface reflected the yellow of the street lamps and the green of the moss along the embankment, but there was no sign of him. The patch of dirt where he'd sat was empty, except for a crushed soda can and a torn plastic bag fluttering in the wind. No footprints, no blanket, no hint that a man had almost drowned here just hours earlier. I leaned on the railing, scanning the banks, the shadows, even the tree line along the opposite shore. My breath fought the air. Nothing. I was about to leave when a voice cut through the morning stillness. "Hey, you there." It wasn't loud, but it was sharp like a command, the kind of voice you react to before you even realize you're doing it. I turned to see a man approaching from the far end of the bridge. He was tall, wearing a long, dark coat that moved slightly with each step. The coat looked expensive, well-fitted. Not something you'd expect to see on a casual passerby at this hour. His black gloves glistened faintly in the damp air. But it was his face that stuck with me, the kind of face you notice immediately. Sharp jawline, neatly trimmed stubble, and eyes that didn't just look at you, they scan you, like he was mentally cataloging every detail. He stopped a few feet from me and reached into his coat pocket. For a split second, I tensed, my mind jumping to the worst possibilities. But he pulled at something small, a photograph. He held it up between two fingers. "Have you seen this man?" The photo was grainy, but I recognized the face instantly. It was him, the man from last night. The same tangled beard, the same hollow, haunted look in his eyes. I felt my pulse pick up, my throat tightened. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked, "Why?" The man's eyes didn't waver. His voice was calm, steady, almost too steady. "He's dangerous. You should tell me if you saw him." Dangerous. My mind flashed back to last night, the man's limp body in the water, his desperate coughs, the way he could barely stand afterward. That wasn't a dangerous man. That was a drowning victim. Something in the man's tone didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. Like it wasn't a warning for my safety, but a test, a probe to see how I'd respond. I thought about the homeless man's last words to me. "They'll find me." I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. "No, haven't seen him." For a moment, the man didn't move. His eyes narrowed, just slightly, and the corners of his mouth twitched like he might say something else. Then, without another word, he slipped the photo back into his coat. He turned to leave, his footsteps slow, deliberate. But halfway across the bridge, he stopped. I felt his gaze before I saw it. He looked over his shoulder at me, not like someone casually glancing back, but like someone making sure I remembered that he'd been here, that he knew I was here. Then he kept walking, his figure fading into the mist at the far end of the bridge. I stayed frozen for a while, my hands gripping the railing so tightly the cold metal bit into my palms. My mind was spinning with questions. Who was that man? Was he a cop? A detective, something else entirely? And why did I feel like telling him the truth would have been a mistake I couldn't take back? The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of the river. The water below looked calm, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something dangerous, something hidden was moving beneath its surface. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. It wasn't just in my head, at least. I didn't think so. Every time I walked past my apartment window, something caught my eye in the corner of the glass. A faint shadow near the streetlight outside, tall, still, almost human, but the second I focused on it, it was gone, leaving only the pool of light from the lamp and the damp pavement beneath it. At first, I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a trick of the light. Or maybe the rain-streaked glass was playing games with my eyes. But the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. My phone started buzzing with calls from an unknown number. The first time, I ignored it. The second time, I picked up. "Hello," I said. Silence. Not the kind of silence where you can tell someone hung up. This was the kind where you know someone is on the other end, listening. The faint static of a bad connection whispered through the speaker. But no words came. "Who is this?" I asked. My voice sharper than I intended. Still nothing. Just breathing, or maybe I imagined it. After a few seconds, the line went dead. By the third night, I was jumpy. My curtains stayed closed. I kept glancing at the locks on my door. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe the man in the coat had been some sort of investigator, and I overreacted. And then I came home and saw it. Something small and misshapen sat in the center of my doormat. At first, I thought it was just a piece of trash blown there by the wind. But as I bent down, I realized it was a folded scrap of paper soaked through from the rain, edges curling. I picked it up carefully, the paper threatening to tear in my fingers. My pulse quickened as I unfolded it. The writing inside was uneven, shaky, and scrawled in black ink that had bled slightly from the dampness. "Don't trust the man in the coat." That was it. No name, no explanation. Just a warning. I stared at the words, my mind immediately flashing back to the photograph, the cold, probing eyes of the man who'd shown it to me, and the way he'd looked over his shoulder as if to make sure I remembered him. This was enough to push me over the edge. I wasn't going to sit around my apartment waiting for another shadow or another silent call. I needed answers. I grabbed my jacket, shoved the note into my pocket, and headed out into the cold night. The streets were quieter than usual, the air heavy with the smell of wet asphalt. I walked fast, my breath fogging in the cold as I made my way back to the bridge. Part of me expected, maybe even hoped, that it would be empty, that I'd find nothing, and this whole strange chapter would just fade away. But as I approached, I saw movement beneath the bridge. Near the concrete supports, a small, flickering light like a candle, or maybe the dull glow of a cigarette. I descended the muddy slope carefully, my shoes slipping on the damp earth. As I got closer, the figure sitting on a crate came into focus. His shoulders were hunched, his head low, and his clothes were just as soaked and heavy as the night I pulled him from the river. It was him. "You followed me," I said quietly once I was close enough for my voice to carry. He lifted his head slowly, his face pale and tired. His lips trembled as he spoke, his voice raspy from cold or exhaustion, or maybe both. "I had to," he said. "They think I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Something under that bridge." My stomach tightened. "What did you see?" His eyes darted toward the black water, reflecting only the faint glimmer of streetlights. He seemed reluctant to answer, like speaking it aloud would make it real again. "A bag," he finally said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Sinking, heavy, I think." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in the glow of the dim light. "I think it was a body." I froze, the words sinking into me like ice water. He kept talking, his gaze never leaving the river. I was trying to sleep. "Herder, then stop up on the bridge." Two men got out. I couldn't see their faces, but I heard them arguing, grunting as they lifted something. Then, the splash. I went to look and saw it sinking, wrapped up, big enough to be a person. I took a slow breath, my mind racing. And the man in the coat, I don't know his name, the homeless man said, "but he's looking for me." Not because he wants to help, but because he wants to make sure I don't talk. The night seemed colder suddenly. The steady ripple of the river below us sounded sharper, almost metallic. I could feel the weight of his words pressing against my chest. And then it hit me there. Note. I pulled it from my pocket and held it out to him. Did you write this? His eyes flicked to the paper, and for a split second, fear flashed across his face. Yeah, he said. I had to warn you. You don't know what you're dealing with. I glanced toward the dark stretch of road above the bridge, my instincts prickling, somewhere out there. Maybe just a few hundred feet away. Someone could be watching us right now. Then we can't stay here, I said. If they know you're alive, they'll come back. He nodded slowly, pulling his coat tight around himself, his shoulders shivering under the weight of the cold and something far heavier fear. And that was the first moment I truly understood. Whatever this was, I wasn't just caught in someone else's problem. I was in it now, whether I wanted to be or not. Every instinct in my body told me to walk away. This was dangerous, more than dangerous. This was the kind of thing you only read about in news articles. The kind where the witness mysteriously goes missing before the trial. And here I was, standing in the freezing damp air under the bridge, face to face with the one man the wrong people clearly didn't want alive. I should have left. Should have told him, sorry, I can't help you, and gone home. But I didn't. Something in his trembling voice pinned me in place. There was no bluff in his eyes, no hint of a con. Just a man haunted by something he'd seen and could never unsee. He shifted on the crate, his knees drawn up, arms hugging himself as if to keep the cold or the memory out. It was 2 nights before you pulled me out, he began. I was sleeping here, under the bridge. It's not warm, but it's dry enough if you find the right spot. His voice wavered. He glanced at the dark water, as though speaking about it might make it happen all over again. I woke up to the sound of tires on the bridge. A van, black, didn't look like any delivery van I've seen. It had no markings, just blank. It stopped right up there. He pointed to the stretch of railing above us, illuminated faintly by the street lamps. I heard doors open. 2 men got out. They were arguing in low voices, angry. One of them said something about getting it over with. Then they started lifting something from the back of the van. He swallowed hard, his hands tightening on his knees. It was long, wrapped in thick plastic, taped all around. It bent in the middle, like it had joints. The hair on my arms prickled. I didn't need him to spell it out. They carried it to the edge, he continued, and then they just threw it over like it was nothing. It hit the water hard, made a sound I'll never forget, and it sank fast. I stared at the water, imagining the splash, the ripples spreading in the dark. That's when one of them looked down, he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, straight at me. I was frozen. I thought maybe they didn't see me. But then, one of them said, "We've got a problem." I felt my jaw tighten. So they know you saw everything. He nodded slowly. They came down here a little while later. I ran. Didn't get far. They caught up to me near the warehouses. They beat me until I couldn't move. I thought they were going to finish the job right there. But one of them said, "Not here," to Messi. That's when they dragged me back toward the bridge. I fought, managed to break free, and jumped into the river. My breath caught. You jumped? I figured drowning was better than what they had planned. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Didn't think anyone would pull me out. Guess I got lucky. Lucky, that was one way to put it. Another way was that saving him had just painted a giant target on my back. I pieced it together in my head. The man in the coat wasn't just looking for him. He was cleaning up loose ends, making sure there was no witness left to tell the story. You should go to the police, I said finally. He gave me a look, one that said I didn't understand. You think they'll believe a homeless guy with no proof, no last name anyone cares about, and a story that sounds like a crime movie? By the time they finish asking me questions, those men will know exactly where I am. I hated that he was right. In the movies, you could walk into a police station and get instant protection. In real life, well, I'd seen enough stories to know better. He leaned closer, his voice urgent. I don't need them to believe me right now. I just need to stay alive long enough to figure out how to prove it. I hesitated. Every rational bone in my body screamed at me to cut ties now, to not get tangled in something I couldn't untangle. But every time I looked at him shaking, soaked to the bone, his eyes darting like a hunted animal, I knew I wasn't going to walk away. Fine, I said, but you can't stay here. If they come back, this is the first place they'll look. He looked around at the cold concrete and the river below, as if realizing for the first time just how exposed he was. Where then? I thought for a moment, then remembered a place I'd passed 100 times without thinking about it. An old boathouse by the pier, abandoned for years. The windows were boarded, the door padlocked, but I knew one of the side panels had been kicked in ages ago. Follow me, I said. He hesitated. You sure about this? No, I admitted. But it's better than you ending up in that river again. We moved quickly through the shadows, sticking to the side streets. Every sound a car door slamming, footsteps echoing in the distance made us flinch. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a dark coat trailing us. When we reached the boathouse, I led him to the side entrance, pulling the warp panel back just enough for him to squeeze through. Inside, the air was stale, smelling of dust and old wood. A broken rowboat lay overturned in the corner, and spiderwebs clung to the rafters. It's not much, I said, but it's dry. And no one comes here. He nodded slowly, settling into the corner near the overturned boot. For the first time, I saw a flicker of relief cross his face. Thank you, he said quietly. I stepped back toward the door. I'll bring you food and clothes tomorrow. Just stay inside. Don't draw attention. He gave me a small nod, his eyes already scanning the dark corners like he was preparing for another sleepless night. As I walked home, the weight of what I'd just done pressed down on me. I'd taken him in, hidden him away from whoever was hunting him, and in doing so, I'd just made myself a part of this whole deadly game. The next 48 hours were a blur of tension and bad decisions. I visited him twice, once in the early morning, when the fog still clung to the water like it didn't want to let go, and once in the dead of night, when even the river seemed to be holding its breath each time. I brought what I could: dry socks, an old sweatshirt, cans of food, and bottled water. But it didn't matter. He was unraveling right in front of me. The second time I saw him, he was crouched in the corner of the boathouse, eyes starting to every creak of wood, every sound outside. His hands shook so badly he could barely open the can of soup I brought. There, close, he whispered once, like the words themselves might summon them. I can feel it. I wanted to tell him he was being paranoid. But after everything I'd seen, the man in the coat, the photo, the warning note, paranoid didn't feel like the right word anymore. The morning of the third day, the weather turned strange. The sky was heavy with low gray clouds, but no rain fell. The air felt thick, like the moments before a storm. Something told me to go check on him early. When I reached the boathouse, the smell hit me first: stale, damp air, and the faint, acrid scent of cigarette smoke. The door was half open, swinging slightly with the breeze. I stepped inside. Empty. The crate he'd been sleeping on was overturned. His blanket lay crumpled in a heap, torn down the middle as if it had been yanked away mid-struggle. The cans of food I'd left were untouched. My sweatshirt was gone, but not because he'd taken it. It was lying in the corner, the collar stretched and ripped. Hello? I called, my voice too loud in the stillness. Nothing. I moved to the back of the boathouse, my eyes scanning the shadows for any sun footprints, a note, something. But all I found were muddy boot prints near the door, much larger than his, and a thin trail of water leading outside toward the pier. The river beyond was as calm as I'd ever seen it, glassy and indifferent, reflecting the dull sky above. No ripples, no sound, no answers. I stood there for a long time, staring out at that water, half hoping I'd see him standing somewhere on the bank, waving me over. But deep down, I knew when I left, I told myself I'd try again tomorrow, that maybe he'd just moved to another hiding spot, that maybe he was still alive. That night, I tried to distract myself with TV, but every sound in the building set me on edge. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, even the distant rumble of traffic fell to loud dot at exactly 11:02 p.m. It came, and knocked dot slow, heavy, 3 times, thump, thump, thump. I froze in my chair. No one knocks like that by accident. I moved toward the door, my bare feet silent against the floor. Every instinct screamed at me not to open it, but curiosity or maybe dread pulled me forward. When I finally swung the door open, the hallway was empty. Almost empty. On the doormat lay a single envelope, white, no writing on the outside. I glanced left and right down the hall. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. No closing doors. Whoever left it had vanished into the silence. I brought it inside, my hands already damp with sweat. The flap wasn't sealed. I slid the photo out carefully. The image was grainy, taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking what it showed. The river under the bridge, the rain pouring down, and me, hauling the homeless man up from the water, my face twisted in effort, his limp body half out of the river. I stared at it, feeling my stomach turn cold. The photo hadn't been in any newspaper. It wasn't online, which meant whoever took it was there that night, watching, close enough to see me. I turned it over. 3 words, written in that same jagged, desperate handwriting I'd seen on the soggy scrap of paper days before they found me. I sank into the nurse chair, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The message was clear. He was gone. Not gone as in moved to another hiding place. Not gone as in skipped town. Gone as in gone. I wanted to believe maybe he'd escaped, that he'd left the note to throw me off, to keep me safe. But deep down, the truth was sitting heavy in my gut. The man in the coat had found him. And if they knew about me, if they'd been watching me long enough to take that picture, then it was only a matter of time before there was another knock. One that didn't end with just an envelope. That was the last I ever heard from him. But it wasn't the last time I thought about him. Even now, I can't drive over that bridge without glancing at the water, half expecting to see someone just beneath the surface. And sometimes, late at night, I think I hear it again. Thump, thump, thump.